Bye.
So today we're going to talk more about the article that we read on Monday that was talking about tipping and how some restaurants in the US are experimenting or trying to run the restaurants without this tipping, with like no tipping policies. Thinking about it, I think you were all here on Monday when we read it, right? So maybe you can each tell me or tell us all a little bit about what you remember from the article or something important that you can remember. Luca?
Yes, hi Natasha. The article spoke about the tipping policy and how about some restaurants are trying to eliminate the tipping policy, but there are different versions about that. In some cases, the new policy without the tipping is considered by the service like a good thing because the salary was increased. In other cases, this is not considered like a good thing because salaries are not increased too much. So the service just prefer to remain at the old type of payment. So the salary, basically salary plus the tips. And also there is another aspect about article spoke, that is the tipping culture. So in some countries the tipping policy is eradicated a lot. So also if you eliminate it, people when go to the restaurants make difficult to just to not leave the tips to waitress. So also if you eliminate it, people going to leave the tips anyway. This is more or less what I remember. A little bit confusing, but
No, that's good. Guys, I have a problem. They've just started some drilling in my building. I don't know if you can hear it through the microphone or not, but I'm going to try to talk as less as possible while I have this background noise, so that I don't give everyone a headache, okay? But okay, who else? Who else can add something else to what Luca said? Manu, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Natasha. Hi, guys. I remember also another thing about the article, that is the gap in money they get between workers, front house workers, and back house workers. As saying, the waiters and that work more directly with customers, and cooks which are in the kitchen, so they don't have to do more directly with customers. So there was a gap in the wages between these two groups of workers, and this fact raised the trouble between workers themselves. So there were angst and anxiety and anger among these workers. This is one reason because there was they used to have a tip pool. So the tip that front house workers got were distributed among back house workers to in order to make all the matter more fair. And then there was another thing that was the tip credit that was allowed to people who run the restaurant, and this way that they could pay their workers less than the minimum wage, if I got it right. So the workers had to rely on tips in order to integrate their wages and make a living from it. It was another thing that I recalled from the article. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, some important ideas there. The idea about the tip credits and about the fact that it's usually the front of house staff that receive tips, but in some places they share them with the back of house staff as well to make it kind of fairer for everybody who works in the restaurant. Okay, does anyone want to add any other details or anything else important that that was in the article? No, that means Manu and Luca did a pretty good idea of explaining it then. Excellent. Okay, so the article was very focused obviously on the US and the system there in the US, where it is very ingrained in their culture. It's very normal in their culture to pay tips wherever they go, especially in places like restaurants. But I want to find out as well, is it the same thing where you live? Do they have this same culture that you have to tip? It's almost compulsory to tip when you go to a restaurant, or do they not have this same kind of focus on tipping? Alex?
Yes, in France, usually it's you don't all is included in the bill, so you don't have to left a tip, but you can if you are very happy. But it's usually it's not mandatory. It's just a plus for the waiter and the buses and the runners. So it could be a good thing, but it's not. They are not waiting for a tip usually, but you can left coins when you pay the bill with cash. It could be a way to show that you are happy with the service and the meat and so on.
Okay, so it's more just about maybe leaving your change after the meal, and if you're really happy or for something really special, you might leave a tip, but it's not something that the server would be expecting, so they're not going to be angry, for example, if you don't leave anything for them.
That's right.
Okay, what about in other places, Manu?
Yes, in Italy, in my country, it works like Alex's country in France. So, especially because we have a culture that we often pay cash we don't use credit card so frequently, I suppose, and we pay cash, so we leave the change if we are we are pleased with the service. So it is up to the customers. They can decide of leaving change as a tip or not leaving change. So it is up to the customer and up to the servers too. So they are very amazed and surprised if the servers if they get the change, because it is not compulsory. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's like getting a present, really. If you leave some money for the server, they get excited about it. Luca?
Yes, in my case, in Italy as well, I think I never left a tip. For sure, a lot of time I pay with the card because I'm traveling for work, and I pay with the company card, and this is the fact. But also when I go out during the weekends by me, I never leave the tip. Just I think at last this is in the north of Italy. I don't know, but I think it's not in our culture to leave the tip. For sure, abroad is a different case. Like I said, also on Monday in London, for example, I work in a restaurant, and everybody leave the tip. But I think is eradicated in the London culture, or also in the USA culture, are different different conception of the work, of this kind of work. That's it, I think. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Australia is a bit the same. In Australia, it's not really expected that you leave a tip when you go to a restaurant or somewhere else. Sometimes people do leave tips, but it's kind of a surprise usually for the server if they receive a tip. It's like something nice, something extra, kind of like they've received a birthday present or something if they get a tip. But it's definitely not something that's expected, and it's pretty rare still that people do it. Mostly tipping happens more from people who have lived in countries, or maybe were born in countries that do have a strong tipping culture, and then they continue that when they go as well. Okay, what about some other places? Do you usually tip in restaurants, or it's not really expected? Shiny, April, Aladdin? April.
I think here it's also like in France and in Italy. It's not mandatory, it's not obligatory. It is already included in the price, the service, and they don't expect that you give something. And sometimes we always give that. We always give, like you said, the chains money. But isn't it also a little bit, kind of humiliating if you just give only, for example, you have to pay €4.50 and you give €5, so it is only 50 cents, and you said, okay, keep the change. It sounds like you give it to a beggar. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know how many I have to give, how much money I have to give for a tip. My son always said you have to give at least 15% or something like that. He said, at least 15%. He said, but yeah, that is sometimes I think, oh, is it enough or is it not enough? Even if I don't, if I'm not satisfied, sometimes I give because I feel obliged to give something, even if I don't like the food, for example. I don't like the service, and that's why I sometimes think, yeah, it is better to do it without, and and include that in the service, and they know then what they have at the end of the day, and instead of waiting, oh, today I hope a lot of people will give me tips, or if nobody gift, then you will be upset. So this I don't really like that, actually, but I always give it. Yeah? So I think if it is the culture, and you are used to do that, you get used to do that, and you can't change that anymore. It isn't only about restaurant. It's easier at this moment because you can still pay cash. But how if you have to pay with credit card? Do you give it the extra tips in cash money, or you include that in the price that you have to uh, to give in the credit card? It that is also my question for all of you. But yeah, Luca doesn't give, and Manu doesn't give, so it is a little bit. Still, the question will not be answered, I think, at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, some very good questions there. So before we start talking about them, I think, Shiny, you wanted to add something.
No, I just want to say we don't have that culture of tipping, and the price is very high in here. So if you pay the tip, I think you will be broken.
Does that mean that the servers are paid a high salary as well then, if the price of the food is very high?
No, I think just don't have that culture. Company has to pay the salary for the workers, not the customers. So they still insist the service, good service without tipping. But I made an experiment. I I paid I paid the tips once, and at first they rejected. Not everyone rejected, but some rejected. Some rejected at first, but when I insist, they accepted.
Okay.
They were happy to accept it. I want to say people love money.
Yes, I think you're right. On both sides, actually, Shiny. I think sometimes the customer doesn't want to give too much money away because they like to keep their money, and the servers are very happy to accept more money if people are willing to give it to them too. That's an interesting experiment too.
And by the way, I work as the I worked in a hotel, and the customers, I mean foreign customers, they pay tips. They hide their tips under the pillows, but I because they don't have that system of accepting tips. So I always wondering where those tips go. You know, I never accepted
interesting question as well, and it relates a little bit to something April said earlier too about whether when you pay the tip in cash or if you pay it on your card. If you pay it on the card, where does it actually go? Does it go to the server or does it go somewhere else? Artem, you wanted to add something.
I think in my circumstances, it's very well spread to just add the some parts, the 10%, 10 to 15%. It depends of area and the restaurant which you visited. Not less than 10, but I have never met more than 15% of your order. But if you wanted to give something in addition, you just give it in. You just give cash directly to the waiter or waiter. It's. But usually, for example, if you will order various of dishes and drinks, and at the end you will receive a bill about, for example, 30 bucks, and you will pay 33 bucks, and 3 bucks it will be for service, for work of people who serve you. And if you wanna to add something, you can do it. It's very well appreciated.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I've heard that same thing before, those same figures around 10 to 15%, but I don't really know where those figures come from or who decided those figures. Luca?
Yes, I think there is another thing to keep in consideration. I don't know in English, the coverage, the coverage tax, the coverage charge. I don't know.
Like a service charge or a
Yeah,
cover fee.
yeah. Because now, and I'm not remember in London, but I'm not sure that abroad, in all countries, you're gonna pay the coverage charge, because. For example, in Italy, you always gonna pay the coverage charge, and I make an example. If you go in Venice and you just want to have a breakfast in the center of Venice, and you take one cappuccino and one croissant. Okay, the really cost is I don't know. 3-4 euros, but the coverage charge is thing like 5 or 10 euros plus. So at the end you pay 15 euros for one breakfast for each person. So I think you don't need to leave the tips.
Okay, this is something to take into consideration as well. Depending on the system, they might already have this kind of built-in tip. So it's either included in the price of the food itself, or it's included as a kind of service charge on the bill. In Brazil, that's usually how it's included. It's included as a service charge, and usually the service charge is 10%. But you can decide whether you pay that service charge or not. So I kind of think it's like a built-in tipping system, really, because it isn't compulsory, but a lot of people will pay it anyway because it's included in the bill as a fee, and they just pay the whole bill. Aladdin.
Here it depends on the place and the people you are sitting with, depending on where is this place you are going to leave tips in it. Lots of depends on. So for example, if you are sitting or you go out for date, for example, so or for some people you want to show some kind of you are important, so you will leave a tips. But if you're sitting with your friends, with your closest friend, you will not leave any tips. It depends on the place. If you are in some kind of places that's they sometimes don't allow tips, and the customers, even both of them, the customer or the servant here or the waitress, is they didn't will mention any tips. But I have lots of situations that it happened. For example, for some of the way I think, yes, we was taking like a boat on Nile River. So some of our friend want to give the tips for the one who are selling this or selling or driving, not driving, indeed selling, right? This is right word. Sells the boat. And
sorry, Aladdin, I've got a lot of background noise here today, so I missed what came before the ceiling part. So I'm not quite sure if it's the right word or not.
Okay. I mean, I have these situations that some of my friend want to offer a tips for this guy, and he is not refused. He was argues that it's a little bit low amount of money to give him, this low allowed money, and he threw the money in front of my friend. So it's starting to be like argue with him how he could do this. It's supposed to don't ask for tips. It's kind of things that's you know, the people offering this kind of tips. It's not right, or it's not supposed to must have to do it. But they sometimes, in some places, you will find some people argue with this amount of money you will give them a tips. But it's usually it will be the rest of money that it's not amount. It's, for example, it's not $1 or how much pound we have here, Egyptian pound. So if I'm in a place, so I supposed to for things that I eat, it cost 46. So I will leave and I will complete it to be as the closest figured number, like 50 here. If it was 46, so it will be 50. If I have 92, it will be 100, and so on. So it will be a rest of what we call it. It will be a rest of bounds here, and this is some kind of acceptable for. What did you say?
It's the change that you would
receive. A change, yes, exactly. The change until to reach to the first primary number, I think. And it's acceptable for... what about 19? It will be 10. It's depend on. It might be a little bit more. It will be 105. Might be. So it's depend on the place and depend on people you are in. So lots of cafes,
so
they offer then
people.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Okay, great. So Well, let's go back then to, well, actually, no, let's continue talking about this question then. If you are going to give a tip, how much would you give? How would you work it out? Would you just give the change? Would you calculate a certain percentage? Do you think is there a rule about how you're supposed to do it? Manu?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to say one thing that usually in my country I don't leave the tip, but when I'm on holiday abroad, I usually leave the change as a tip because I feel a rich person, so I want to be generous wherever I go. So it is just an attitude I get when I go on holiday abroad, especially abroad. But when I'm in Italy, I return a stingy person to again. So it depends on the situation. When I'm on holiday, I usually tend to leave change on table when a restaurant, at bar, coffee, etc. Thank you.
Interesting. Okay, so you have two different money spending personalities depending on where you are.
Yes,
Adam?
a kind of,
sorry.
excuse, kind of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, kind of this thing. Thank you.
I hope it's just with money and not with other things as well. Adam?
What I usually go in the same cafe usually, and the majority of stuff I met a lot of times, and that kind of bars and so on is being attending by a huge amount of people, and I would like to leave some tips all the time, about $5 usually, but I don't go as much I would want it, but the reason why I do it is because of fast of service. It speed service much better. You know, you can order your food or drinks, and you can wait 15 minutes, for example, but they knew me already, and they knew that I will leave something. They bring it back to me in a few minutes, and this is the reason why you do it. Is it?
Okay, so you see kind of a direct result then from paying tips. You actually get better service when you go back to that place because they know that you leave tips for them. Okay. Alex?
Yes, usually I don't leave any tip, but it could be there could be exceptions. For example, if the service or the food is better than expected, and if the price is really fair, if it's not, if I consider that the service or the meal could be paid more, so I decided to leave a tip. But if I consider that the price I paid is the right price, I don't leave anything. And it depends also if you are special need or special service during the meal. It could be good to leave something to the waiter.
Yeah, I think that's how I think about tips or feel about tips a little bit as well. If there was something special in the service, or maybe they helped you with something in particular, or changed something specially for you, or went out of their way to help you in some kind of way, then I feel like it maybe deserves to receive a tip or deserves to get something extra. But if they were just doing kind of their job, I guess I don't understand as much why you would give them a tip just for doing their job, what they're supposed to do. But I don't know. Does everyone agree with me, disagree with me? Do you think that, especially in places like the US where they get a very low kind of salary and they rely on their tips, do you think that tips are just something for kind of exceptional, kind of special service, or do you think that all servers deserve to get a tip because it's making up part of their wage, really? April?
If I don't give any tips, it doesn't mean. I think here in Belgium, of course, then I think that they don't know what I think actually. Am I satisfied or am I not satisfied? Because it is not our culture to give tips. But I think in America, it is just, even if their service is bad, you still need to give tips. I think otherwise you will be, they will shut out or run after you when you leave without giving tips. But so for me, it is not about good service or not. It is just, yeah, I don't know. I need to give something because they do something for me. That is maybe my reason to give some tips. But okay, we are talking now about restaurant. But what about something else, like a hotel, like Shiny said? Shiny, I remember when I went to Japan, I read in a Lonely Planet, I think, that it is really not advisable to give tips in Japan because they don't like it. And once in a hotel in Indonesia, that's the only hotel that I know that they give that policy, not tipping policy. It is written everywhere, in every table, every that you are not supposed to give tips to anybody there. But I feel so sorry because I know that there in Indonesia their salary was not so good, and they really expect to have tips. So, and they are so nice for me. They were so nice for me. So what should I do? Should I give? Should I not give? This if I give them, then I will break the policy, and it's maybe not good for in the future for the hotel. So it is so strange. And once in Singapore, that was also something funny, because I didn't have Singaporean money, and at that moment I didn't have enough change. I only have a couple coins of dollars, I think, and the porter who took my bag to my room. So I gave only what I had, and it was not so much. And he was so he was so upset, and he said, only this. So, and I said, I was so ashamed. And I said, what should I do? I said, okay, I will give you later because I don't have any change at this moment. It is not possible to give him $10, for example, for just bringing my bag in the lift to my room, because the only the smallest money that I had is maybe $10. So I don't want to give him that much also. And I was waiting. I was there 3 days, I think, and I tried to find himself again to give him later on more money, but I couldn't remember anymore who is he, and how can I find him anymore. So it was so funny, but they really expected to give something shiny. Also, it was in Hotel Shiny. So that was my experience. Oh yeah, and one other thing also, guides, tourist guide, in Czechia, I think was that in Czechia, with the tour organization, we can get 1 hour or a day or a half day free tour with guides, and halfway I already bought her a cup of coffee. So we took a break and we went to the cafe, and all of the participants of the tour drank coffee, but she wanted to sneak away actually, because he said, okay, you all go to that snack and I will come back at in half an hour. And I said, why you are going? Come and drink with us. I will buy you a cup of coffee. Okay. And then we continue our tour, and at last, when it was finished, everybody went away, and I was there only with my son, the last one, and I think I had to give her something else because I was satisfied, but I was so ashamed. How can I give them without fuss, so secretly? Because it is not the. I don't think. I don't think I have to give something, but I want to give them. But if I want to give them, I don't prepare money in my pocket. So if I want to give it, I have to open my handbag and open my wallet, and it was so. I feel that it was a little bit humiliating, and I said to her, "Come, we are going to have a cup of coffee again." Oh, now you have already we have already bought me a cup of coffee, but she was waiting, so I wasn't sure. Was she waiting for a tips or what? And after that, she went away, and I didn't give anything. And my son was very upset. Why didn't you? Why aren't you ready with your money if you know that you have to give somebody money? So how it was not about restaurant, but in the restaurant is easier because of course you have to pay, and unlike Aladdin, we are with a group of friends, it's easier to give tips because normally we divide our expenses if we are with 10, for example, and we divided it and we round up the amount of money that we have to pay. So the change is for the waiter or the waitress. So if we go in a group, that is always easier. It is always a tip for the server because it is easier for us too. Thank you for listening, guys.
Yes, and I think that's one of the most difficult things about tipping. It can create some really awkward situations sometimes where you're not sure if you should or not, or about how much you should be, or if you don't have change. And it gets really uncomfortable, I think, for both sides. This is one of the reasons why I feel a bit about tipping. I feel like it creates some very uncomfortable situations sometimes. Artem?
I want to ask you one special question. I'm a little bit confused. I know some kind of facilities, for example, like McDonald's and so on, which provide us with fast food, but is there some special English words which can express the same meaning, which includes restaurants, bar, and so on, which use a series of waiter and waiters? Because usually in Starbucks or McDonald's you have to order directly your order from cashier. You don't wait usually. Is there anything?
Yeah, I think we would normally talk about maybe restaurants like McDonald's and Starbucks and things like this as fast food restaurants. And I think usually in these places, most people know or they accept that you don't tip in these kinds of places. A group kind of term for other things, I think we would just call them more restaurants, or we have other terms for more like high-end restaurants. Like we talked about some last session, the high-end restaurant or upscale restaurants, but that's right at the other end. I can't think of any term that talks about everything in the middle. You could just talk about hospitality workers. That probably covers a lot of people that you're talking about, because that's talking about anybody who would work in, for example, a restaurant or a cafe or a bar, and also people who work in hotels as well. So you could talk about these kinds of people as like hospitality workers.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Shiny.
I forget what I was going to say because I was all thinking about what April said. I think in Japan you have to give away those thinking of tipping. If you want to show your generosity, you just go to the manager and tell the manager you get a good service from somebody. So mention his or her name, and because it's a gray zone, we don't have that system. So I really don't know where those money go, and I never see it. But if when you go back to your country, you write a letter to someone you want to thank, they will be very happy, more than accepting money, because they also confused because they don't know how to deal with those money. So maybe you can before you're leaving, you write a memo, write a note, or give some little present. They will be very happy.
Okay, so receiving some good feedback or having someone tell their boss or their manager that they're a very good worker, that's kind of like a better reward for people than receiving a tip.
Yeah, I think we have to, we don't, just don't think about how to tip all the time. Show your feeling in another way.
I think that I would get in trouble if I went to a country that has lots of tipping, because I don't think I would think about it at all until maybe I had an angry person in front of me wanting to know why I haven't paid the tip. Alex?
Another example is Cuba, because in Cuba they have two monies. So they have one money for the cook, what they call cook for the tourists, and another one for the Cuban people. and Cuban people who work in touristic attraction and so on can receive tips in cook, and so they will raise their wage, and they can live comfortably with have a comfortable life, because in Cuba even public servants like teachers and so on, and advocates, lawyers, are so bad paid by the state that they prefer to work in tourism, and so that's why, for example, there it's a good thing to give a tip to your guide or so on.
Okay, because it's like a way, even a small amount of tip in the other currency could be worth a lot more than a much larger tip in their own currency or their salary, for example. Okay, Luca.
Yes, I just want to say I agree in some cases with the tips because there is one reason to keep in mind that in some countries the salaries are proportional. I don't know if proportional is the right way to explain, but for example, one engineer in London or in the US earn a very high salary. Instead, all people working in restaurants earn respect to other kind of jobs a low salary. In Italy, the situation is a little bit different. So I think also for this reason we don't leave tips because, for example, if you make in Italy, if you make the waitress, in some cases you're gonna earn more respect to, for example, respect to one engineer. So I think this is or respect to a person who work who make projects in an office. So I think this is a reason to keep in mind. Instead, for example, I remember in London, I lived with other people, and one my flatmate that worked in an office. I remember his salary was more or less double respect to that I earn. So I don't know. Basically, in some cultures, the tips are a right way to recognize the good service, and also a good way to help some people that have difficult to go at the end of the month because salaries are really low respect to the cost of the life.
Exactly, yes. Really, for some people in some countries, these tips aren't just an extra, like a bonus. It's just that the tips are actually become part of their salary. They need those tips to be able to pay their bills and to buy the things that they need to buy. They're actually part of their salary and not just an extra good bonus if they receive it or not. Aladdin?
I think it's two different places. They're doing something. I think it's good. When they take tips, for example, I saw this in gas stations, petrol stations. So if you go to there and because it's not like other country you serve yourself. No, it's there is lots of people on this gas station. They will give you these services. So if they take a tips, they putting on a place like to collect them. For example, if you give someone shouting, am I shouting? You interrupted me.
Keep going, Aladdin. Ignore
Okay.
it. You can read the messages later.
Okay. So if you give someone, some of them will take £5, some of them will take £10, some of them will take £1 or £2. So they will collect all those money in a place. After they ending the day, they will divide this money for all of them. So it's not. So some people will give you low tips. Some of people will give you a high tips. So they will collect all those tips in special place, and after the day end, so they will divide this for each other. You got the idea? Tip jar, yeah.
Yes. Or tipping pool as well. That's the term that they mentioned in the article. Yeah, this can make it a little bit fairer for everyone, so that everyone in the well, in any of the places, it doesn't have to be a restaurant, but just so that everybody is getting a fair amount from the tips, and it's not very unequal between different people or different professions maybe who are working in that same place. Artem?
Yeah, but I aware about that kind of habits and rules of some kind of bars and restaurants. Why do you want to ask me? Because I used to be a waiter about few months on the second maybe course of my university, and I work in bowling club, and that facility was actually very huge, and the owner didn't and still don't have only only bowling. It has it includes also billiard and so other stuff, and I have seen a lot of fights when the rules was considering include that kind of rule in as a general thing or not, because there was a lot of fights, and but my understanding of this, it depends on beauty. I think that or equality. If you serve good, you will get much more paid. But if you are a beautiful waitress and you serve very good, so you will be paid very well. I assure you. That's it.
Yes, and actually we're almost out of time for today, but one of the questions that we didn't have time to really talk about very much, but I thought was very interesting, was they talked a little bit about discrimination in the article, and about the fact that customers, when a place has tipping, that the customers can discriminate, so they can, for example, make their server feel good or bad depending on how much money they leave them. And they can also kind of push them to maybe to do things for them so that they will get their tip. but that also that the servers sometimes will discriminate against the customers too, based on who maybe will pay the most, or who's likely to give a tip and who maybe won't give a tip. Do you think this is a problem with tipping? The fact that you can get better or worse service, or that maybe nobody will want to serve you if they think that maybe you're not going to give them a tip? Do you think that this is an important reason why maybe it's better not to have these kinds of tipping? Artem?
I think we have to put it, we have to impose maybe the customers to give tips, because it's will be totally included in bills. It will, the workers will be not so, how to say, not so willing to work better. You know, there is won't be possibility to get more money to get more as possible. I think the customer have to decide who have to be paid more or not.
Okay. Aladdin?
Okay, I will start with the questions from April. They know, because they know if you will give them a tips or not, and first, so they will know. So because they are, this is our area. This is their area. Sorry, this is their area, and they know exactly if you. It's from experience, and if they know, they will know that I know. I said I said with some people working as the sales and working as a waitress, and they told me that they know this customer will give them amount of money, or they will go and sell something from them or not, and they sometimes market them, and this is the bad things happen for they market as that, okay, this one is not going to, he will going to ask us anymore, and they give them a bad things, a bad for example, they will not give him every single questions. For example, if they go to buy a new car, so they will know that person is not going to buy any car, so they don't want to waste their times on these customers, because they will not get any benefit from spending time with it. Not even it's not about the tips only, because this is, they have a target, they have achievement, they want to get it, so they will not wasting their times with some customers. They will don't do it anything with them. They know who will give them a tips, and this is the bad thing. So sometimes it's happened before you give them. So if you want to if I go to any place, I will not take any. For example, I feel like all waitress here is not give me the good servicing, so I will find some of them, so I will give him a tips in advance, so I will give back a good servicing here. So I want to spend a good time with my friend or with people I'm spending time with it, so it's like an advantage here. So it's not good things, but you don't have any other solutions, but this is the bad things.
Yeah, unfortunately, people will judge other people not necessarily based on what's real, but what they assume about other people. And that could mean that some people get better service than others based on what the servers assume about them, basically. Luca.
Yes. Okay. I think my opinion is nowadays is difficult to see a discrimination, or at least in the big cities, a discrimination based on your clothing, your age, your skin color. I don't think this. I think just that. Okay, for sure. Sometimes people can like you or cannot, but because your service is not quite good sometimes. But I think it is part of the game. If you accept the tips, in some cases you have also to accept the people who don't want to tip you sometimes because your service was not good. I think this you have to accept because it's part of the game, is your rule.
Okay, so if you're going to accept tips, you have to be willing to work for them, really, or you need to be willing to accept that sometimes you're going to get them and sometimes you're not.
Yes, and just I want to add another small thing. Anyway, also in the countries where you have not the tips, you don't have to forget that nowadays TripAdvisor, all people can put bad comments about you or your restaurant. So also this could be like a discrimination. I don't think that only the tips make a discrimination.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. That's another way now that people have to show that they're dissatisfied with a restaurant or some kind of service that they get. They can leave a review, a bad review now, and that's being used by a lot of people now, I think. I don't know if they're using tips, so if they're not paying a tip and leaving a bad review, or they're just doing one or the other, but it is another way now that people have to show that they're dissatisfied with something. Okay, guys, I have a feeling that there's lots of other things that we could talk about on this subject today. So if you have any more ideas or anything else you want to add, remember we've got the post on the forum as well, so leave some of your ideas there. One of the other questions that I wanted to ask that we didn't really have time was about why you think that some places have no tipping policies. So for example, the hotel that April spoke about, why do you think the hotel would create this? You know, do you think there's some kind of reason? Do you think that something's happened that's meant that they've created this policy? So maybe have a think about that as well, and we can talk about that more a little bit on the forum so we can continue this conversation, because it's very detailed. There's lots of different things here. Adam, did you want to add something quickly now, or?
No, I want to answer all the questions, but you suggested to put my results in forum. Okay, I will do it. Okay,
fantastic. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the session today. I hope it was interesting. It was interesting for me, definitely. I didn't realize that so many countries didn't really have this as part of their culture. I thought a lot more countries did have it, so that surprised me. But thank you all very much. Hopefully talk to you all again soon, and don't forget to hit the red button to hang up the call, okay? Bye, everyone.